I used to think imaginary friends were harmless, a phase, a little person your kid invents to deal with boredom or loneliness or whatever it is that 5-year-olds quietly wrestle with when they don't have the words for fear or confusion. That was before mine told my son something no one else should have known. We moved into the house in early spring. It was the kind of fixer-upper couples romanticize on Pinterest before reality and rot set in. I'd inherited it after my grandmother passed, a creaking Victorian in a rural stretch of upstate New York, wrapped in fog and long-forgotten wallpaper. It's a little spooky, my husband Dan joked during the first week, but it's got character. Character. That's what people say when something is old enough to smell like ghosts. At first, Ben adjusted well. He was quiet, but he always had been. A soft little soul with wide eyes and an endless curiosity for books, dinosaurs, and trucks. We enrolled him in kindergarten, unpacked the boxes, and told ourselves this was the start of something good. Then he met Eli. I first heard the name when I passed his room one afternoon and caught him talking to someone, not the babbling play talk he used to do with his toys. This was a conversation, whispered, measured. I knocked. He fell silent. "Hey, buddy," I said, easing the door open. "Who are you talking to?" Ben blinked at me. "Eli." My smile faltered. "Is Eli a friend from school?" He lives here. Something about the way he said it, not playfully, not imaginatively, but plainly, made my stomach pull tight. Dan waved it off. "He's adjusting. Kids make stuff up. I had an imaginary friend when I was little, Calvin. He lived in the attic and taught me how to play cards." But Calvin never told Dan secrets from his parents' past. By week 3, Ben was spending hours alone in his room. The door stayed shut. When I asked what they played, he said, "We just talk. Eli doesn't like toys." That night, I pressed my ear to the door. Nothing at first, just silence, then a soft murmur, barely audible. Ben speaking, pause, then another voice, lower, fainter, impossible. I yanked the door open. Ben sat alone on the floor, a book in his lap. "Were you talking to someone?" I asked. He looked at me strangely. We were reading. "Who's we?" "Me and Eli." I didn't sleep much that night. The next day, I asked him what Eli looked like. He frowned. "He doesn't have a face." "What do you mean?" Ben shrugged. "He's like shadows, like when the lights are off and you close your eyes." I tried not to let him see the chill crawl up my arms. "Does Eli say nice things to you?" Sometimes he says you're hiding things." I knelt in front of him. "Hiding what?" Ben looked at me with a quiet seriousness only children can muster, as if the question was silly, as if the answer was obvious. "You know," he said, "about the basement." I didn't say a word. I couldn't. Because here's the thing. The basement was locked. We'd never taken Ben down there. The old wooden door at the end of the hallway had a rusted bolt we hadn't gotten around to replacing. Dan joked that it probably hadn't been opened since the Eisenhower administration. We hadn't even found the key. So how the hell did Ben know there was a basement? I didn't tell Dan that night. I wasn't ready to be the crazy parent, to put this fog of fear into words. Instead, I waited until Ben was asleep and walked quietly down the creaking hallway. The basement door loomed at the end like a missing tooth in the house's smile. I ran my hand along the frame, cold, dry. I pressed my ear to it. Silence. No whispers, no movement, no Eli. The next day, I picked Ben up from school and decided we'd have a normal, happy afternoon. No talk of shadows, no Eli. I made cookies, we played a board game. He laughed, a real laugh, not the quiet half smiles he'd been giving lately. Then he said it. "Eli says the people in the basement didn't mean to hurt you." My hands froze mid-dish. I turned to him slowly. "What did you say?" He looked up, confused by my reaction. "He said they were just trying to make you forget." "Forget what?" I didn't say anything else. I tucked him into bed, kissed his forehead, and sat on the couch, staring at the basement door until it blurred into the shadows. That night, I dreamed of the old house as it used to be, back when I was small. My grandmother humming a tune I couldn't name, a locked door I was never allowed to open, the smell of damp wood, and something else, something sweet and spoiled. I woke up covered in sweat, the name Eli echoing in my head like a memory I didn't own. Dan noticed I was distant. "Maybe you need to get out of the house," he said gently. "Get some air." I nodded, but inside I was unraveling. My son was talking to someone, or something, that knew details about my childhood I hadn't thought about in decades, things I'd buried, things no one else should know. By the end of the week, the lights in Ben's room started flickering at night, and we changed the bulb. They kept flickering. One evening, I walked past and noticed the window was open. I never opened that window. It was stuck for years and hard to latch, but there it was, cracked wide, a soft breeze pulling the curtains inward like a hand. Ben sat on the floor, eyes closed, whispering. "What are you saying?" I asked. He didn't open his eyes. "I'm just repeating what Eli tells me." I waited. "He says you should ask about the night the power went out." I stepped back because I remembered that night. I was 10. The lights had gone out during a thunderstorm. My grandmother lit candles and locked every door in the house, including the basement. I'd asked her why. She'd snapped at me, not like her. Her hands trembled as she bolted the hallway door. And later, after I'd gone to bed, I heard her crying in the kitchen. I'd forgotten about it until now, until Eli. I didn't tell Dan what Ben had said. I wanted to. But some part of me needed to know first. I needed to be sure this wasn't just stress or memory playing tricks. Because if it wasn't, if Eli was real, or something like real, then I had to find the connection. And I knew exactly where to start. The basement. The locked door I hadn't opened in over 2 decades. The one my grandmother had bolted like it contained something alive. That afternoon, while Dan was running errands and Ben was at school, I pulled on a pair of gloves and headed to the hallway. The bolt on the basement door was rusted, but not impossible. I pried at it with a flathead screwdriver until it gave with a metallic snap. The door groaned open an inch. Cold air rushed up, musty and stale, and something else, faint but unmistakable. Rot. The stairs creaked under my feet as I descended. I flicked on the flashlight app on my phone, the yellow beam cutting through dust and cobwebs. It wasn't a large basement, just concrete walls, wooden beams, and an old oil tank in the corner. And in the center, a warped rug. I pulled it back slowly. There, half buried in the wood floor, was a square outline, a crawl space, and at one corner, sticking out just slightly, a key, small, brass, cool to the touch. It was wedged between 2 floorboards like it had been dropped, or hidden. My hands shook as I pried it loose. I didn't know what the key opened, but I knew it wasn't this basement door. The keyhole here was too large. No, this key was for something else, something smaller, something deliberately locked. That night, I placed the key on the kitchen table. Dan was upstairs reading. Ben had gone to bed early, unusually quiet. I stared at the key for an hour, sipping cold tea. Part of me wanted to throw it out, bury it in the woods, burn the whole basement to the ground. But another part, the part Eli seemed to know, wanted to remember. And it got its wish. I woke up at 3:17 a.m. to the sound of footsteps. Not on the stairs, not in the hall, in Ben's room. I crept out of bed, heart pounding, and walked slowly to his door. It was open. Ben was sitting up in bed, eyes wide, staring at the corner. The same corner he always said Eli stood in. "Ben?" I whispered. He turned slowly, his lips moved. "Eli says it's time to open the box." "What box?" He pointed toward the hallway. "The one under the floor." I blinked. "In the basement?" He nodded. "He says you already have the key." The next morning I went back down, rug peeled away, flashlight in hand. I examined the floorboards again, this time around where the key had been found, gently tapping along the planks, listening for the hollow thump that gave away a cavity underneath. There it was, beneath the far corner, under a pile of old paint cans. I cleared the space and wedged the screwdriver between the seams. The plank popped up, dry splinters breaking free, and there, wrapped in a mildewed cloth, was a metal box, small, rusted, about the size of a shoebox. The key fit perfectly. I opened it. Inside, papers, old ones, water-stained and yellowing. I unfolded the first sheet, patient record, Emily Rivers. Date of admission, March 3rd, 1998. Diagnosis, dissociative episodes, sleepwalking, night terrors. Treatment plan, isolated supervision under legal guardian. No pharmacological intervention. I froze. Emily Rivers. That was my mother's maiden name, but I didn't remember ever meeting someone by that name. I certainly didn't remember her being ill. And the document was signed at the bottom. Supervisor, Marjorie Lane, my grandmother. The second paper was worse. It was a handwritten letter. No envelope, just torn lined paper, written in a shaking hand. If she remembers, she'll come apart. The voices are getting louder. They say the basement isn't enough. They want the child too. I told them no, but they don't listen. I'm trying to protect her. I promise I'm trying. There was no signature, but I recognized the handwriting. I'd seen it on birthday cards, on grocery lists stuck to the fridge. My grandmother. I sat on the basement floor, heart racing, surrounded by mildew and the weight of something I hadn't expected. Dread, wrapped in memory. Who was Emily Rivers? Why was my grandmother supervising her? Why did this treatment plan include me? That night, Ben wouldn't eat dinner. He just sat at the table, eyes distant. When I finally asked what was wrong, he looked up at me and said, "Eli says she wasn't your sister. She was you." And then he smiled. I didn't speak after Ben said it. I couldn't. He had gone back to chewing his food, completely unaware that he'd just shattered something in me, like a splintered mirror that no longer showed just one reflection, but dozens. She was you. Those words echoed through me all night. I barely slept. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the old plaster forming shapes I didn't want to interpret. I tried to tell myself it was just a child's nonsense. Kids blend stories, imagine things, except Ben never made up things before. Not like this, and not with this kind of precision. The next morning, I did what any desperate person would do. I pulled out the old family albums. There weren't many, just 2 or 3 photo books with cracked leather spines, stored in a plastic bin labeled Lane Old. I hadn't looked at them in years, not since before my grandmother passed, maybe even longer. Most of the pictures were black and white or sun-faded, birthdays, graduations, family holidays. But one photo made me stop cold. It was dated April 1998, written in red ink on the back. It showed my grandmother in the front garden, holding a little girl's hand. Not me. I was too young. I hadn't started school yet. But the girl looked like me, almost identical. Same hair, same posture, same cautious slanted smile. On the back, underneath the date, someone had written, "M. Do not show this to her." That's all. No full name, no context, just a warning. Do not show this to her. Her? Me? I flipped through the rest of the album. No more photos of the girl. None, just that one. And I knew then, I wasn't crazy. I wasn't imagining it. There had been another child, or maybe there hadn't. Maybe Eli wasn't talking about someone else at all. I tried to call my mother. We hadn't spoken in nearly 6 years. Not since she skipped Ben's second birthday and sent a blank card by accident. She lived in Florida now, somewhere warm and forgetful. She didn't pick up. I didn't leave a message. Instead, I drove out to the Old Town Library. It was mostly abandoned, a relic from a time before digital, but the archives room was still accessible. Paper records, birth announcements, obituaries, school reports. It took me an hour to find what I was looking for. There was no Emily Rivers listed as living in this house in 1998. No medical admission records, no school registration, but there was one curious entry, a fire inspection report filed in April of 1998. The same month the photo was dated. It was for structural smoke damage in a basement-level crawl space. No fire department record, no follow-up, just a note, inspected, no obvious ignition source, complaint filed anonymously. Someone reported smoke from under this house. and no one investigated further. That night, I pulled the metal box from the crawl space again and checked the lining. Sure enough, tucked into a flap at the bottom was a small, folded Polaroid. It was burned on one side, half melted. But the image was clear enough. A little girl standing in front of the hallway mirror. She looked like me, but it wasn't me. I know because I remember that mirror. I used to play in front of it as a child, and in all the memories I have, my reflection always moved when I did. In this photo, the girl's reflection was smiling, but the real girl wasn't. I started to cry, not because I was scared, though I was, not because I was confused, though I was that too. I cried because some part of me, deep in the marrow of my bones, knew something had happened in this house, something I had forgotten or been made to forget. Ben knocked on my door just before bedtime. He held one of his drawings, crude, childlike, but unmistakable. It showed 3 people in a row, me on the left, Ben on the right, and in the middle, a tall, shadowy figure. No face, just lines. Underneath he'd written, "Eli says she's not done remembering." I didn't ask Ben what he meant by, "she's not done remembering." I couldn't. Not then. Because the idea that someone or something else had access to my memories before I did was enough to make me want to tear the walls down just to find the truth faster. I couldn't stop shaking that night. Dan noticed, but I brushed it off. Told him I wasn't feeling well. He offered to take Ben to school the next day, and I didn't argue. As soon as the house was empty, I went back to the photo, the one with the mirror. The image had burned into my brain. The girl's body turned one way, her reflection another, smiling. I remembered that mirror vividly. It was in the upstairs hallway across from the linen closet, except it wasn't there anymore. I walked upstairs, my heart a steady thud behind my ribs. The hallway was narrower than I remembered, lined with peeling floral wallpaper and dust-covered picture frames. I stood in front of the linen closet. No mirror, just a blank wall. And then it hit me. There was a small seam along the baseboard, just barely visible. A tiny line in the wood trim that shouldn't have been there. I knocked. It echoed. Hollow. There was space behind that wall. I ran to the garage and grabbed a flashlight and a hammer. I didn't care about damage anymore. I needed answers. It only took a few hits to crack through the drywall. Underneath, behind layers of old wood and insulation, I found it. A door. A small one. No more than 4 feet tall. Painted the same pale yellow as the hallway once had been. Dusty, sealed shut with a thin strip of rotting glue along the frame. A door that shouldn't have existed. My hands were shaking as I pulled the handle. It groaned open, stiff from years of disuse. The smell hit me instantly. Mildew, dust, old perfume, and something else, like burnt plastic. I crawled inside. The room was maybe 6 by 6 feet, no windows. One old lamp in the corner, unplugged, frayed cord still coiled. The wallpaper was striped, blue and white, faded, and on one wall, a mirror, the same one from the photo. Oval-shaped, silver-edged, slightly cracked at the corner. As I approached, I felt the air shift, like pressure dropping before a storm. I stared into the mirror, and for a second, I didn't see myself. I saw her, the girl from the photo. She looked older now, maybe 8 or 9. Same hair, same eyes, but they weren't my eyes. They were angrier. And she wasn't mimicking me. She was staring through me. I fell back, gasping, scrambling out of the room and into the hallway. My chest heaved, my vision blurred. I slammed the small door shut and pressed my back to it. It took nearly 5 minutes for my breathing to slow, another few before I could stand again. That night, I tried to bring it up to Dan. "I found something in the house," I said softly, watching Ben play with his trucks on the floor. "Behind the hallway wall?" Dan barely looked up. "What kind of something?" "A hidden room, a mirror, old furniture. I think someone lived in there." He frowned. "Like a tenant?" I hesitated. "No, like a child." Now he looked at me. I expected disbelief, a laugh, a dismissal. Instead, he said, "Do you think this has something to do with Ben?" I didn't answer because I didn't want to admit what I was thinking, that the imaginary friend wasn't imaginary, that the room had been sealed for a reason, and that whatever was trapped in that mirror wasn't done with us. Later that night, Ben came into our room crying. I sat up. "What's wrong?" He sniffled. "Eli says she's mad you found the room." Dan stirred beside me. "Who's mad?" Ben's lip trembled. "The girl in the mirror." I pulled him into bed beside us. "There's no girl, sweetheart, just reflections." He shook his head against my shoulder. "She says you're lying." I didn't go near the mirror the next day. I wanted to, but I couldn't. Just thinking about that reflection, the one that didn't copy me, made my skin crawl. There's something deeply unnatural about mirrors that don't behave. It messes with your brain, with reality. Instead, I kept busy, cleaned, washed laundry I'd already folded, cooked even though no one was hungry. Dan took Ben to the park, and I told them I was tired. They didn't push it. But the truth was, I couldn't stop thinking about what Ben had said. "She's mad you found the room." That night, as I was brushing my teeth, I glanced into the bathroom mirror, just a glance, and I froze, because for a split second I thought I saw someone behind me, not Dan, not Ben, a girl, hair hanging wet down the sides of her face, standing just inside the bathroom door. But when I spun around, the room was empty. I waited, barely breathing, nothing. I looked back at the mirror, just me, and the door still slightly ajar. The house felt different the next day, heavier, quieter, like it was holding its breath. Ben stayed close to me, unusually clingy. He didn't mention Eli once, not until bedtime. I was tucking him in when he whispered, "Eli's hiding." Hiding from what? Ben stared at the ceiling. Her. "Who is she, Ben?" His voice dropped so low I had to lean in to hear him. "She says you forgot her, that you promised never to forget." My mouth went dry. "Did she say her name?" Ben didn't answer. Instead, he reached under his pillow and pulled out another drawing. This one was different. It showed a mirror, cracked, dark, with a girl inside it, looking out. She had no face, just long black hair and hollow eyes. Next to the mirror was a bed, and on the bed was me, sleeping. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the hallway floor, staring at the tiny hidden door. I thought about opening it again, smashing the mirror, burning the whole damn thing. But something in me said no, not yet. Instead, I went down to the crawl space again. I pulled out the rusted box and checked the documents one more time. Then I noticed something I'd missed before. A torn corner of a page jammed under the metal lining. I pulled it free. It was a photo. This one was different. It showed my grandmother and 2 children. One of them was definitely me. I recognized the pink sweater, the chipped front tooth. I must have been 6, but the second child, the girl beside me, was wrong. She looked like me, almost exactly like me, but her eyes were too wide, her smile too sharp, and behind both of us, blurred in the photo but clearly visible, was a mirror. The girl beside me had no reflection. I dropped the photo. It felt like the ground shifted beneath me, like a thread inside my head had snapped loose. How had I never seen that photo before? Why had my grandmother kept it hidden? Why had she locked away a room in her house? And then, suddenly it came back. A memory, faint, like a dream half remembered after waking. I was in that tiny room, the hidden one. I was standing in front of the mirror, and someone was behind me, whispering in my ear, "Say it out loud, or I'll disappear forever." I woke the next morning to the sound of glass breaking. I ran to Ben's room. The mirror above his dresser was shattered. A perfect web of cracks fanned out from the center, like something had punched through from inside. Ben was sitting on the floor, knees hugged to his chest, staring at the shards. "She's angry," he whispered. "She says you left her there." "She says you left her there." Ben's words hit like a slap, but he didn't even flinch. He just kept staring at the broken mirror, his small face blank, eyes glassy. "Ben," I said, crouching beside him, "did you break the mirror?" He shook his head. "She did. From the inside." I looked at the shards. None had fallen. They clung together in a perfect spider web of fractured glass, as though afraid to let go. She said you promised, Ben added softly. You said you'd always remember. That day, I stayed home from work. I told Dan I wasn't feeling well. He offered to stay too, but I insisted he go. I needed time, alone, with the house, with the truth. I went back upstairs and opened the hidden door. The air inside the room felt colder than I remembered, like something had been disturbed. The mirror stood just as I'd left it, its silver frame dulled with age, the crack in its corner a little deeper than before. I didn't step inside. I just stared, and that's when I saw it. Letters, written on the mirror in the faintest layer of fog, as if someone had breathed against the glass and traced it with their finger. Lila. Lila. The name hit me like ice water. I backed away, nearly tripping over the threshold. My breath caught in my throat, because suddenly memory came rushing in like a flood. I was 8, sitting in that tiny hidden room, whispering into the mirror, talking to Lila. She was my twin. Not imaginary, not a game, a real person. We had a secret place, the small room, our fort, our kingdom. But then something happened, something terrible, a storm, a power outage, screaming. I remembered fire, a crackling sound, the smell of something burning, and then my grandmother's arms around me, tight, panicked. Don't look, don't turn around. And then darkness, and when I woke up, Lila was gone, and no one ever said her name again. I ran to the basement, heart pounding. I had to know if there were more records, more proof. I tore open the box again, scattering its contents, and there, folded inside an envelope marked "Do Not File," was a birth certificate. Lila Grace Rivers. Born August 12th, 1990. Twin of Kakan. Name redacted. My name had been crossed out, not erased, redacted, like I wasn't meant to know we were connected. Like someone had tried to cut me out of her story. I don't remember climbing back upstairs. I don't remember grabbing the hammer from the kitchen. I only remember the noise, the shatter, as I smashed the mirror in the hidden room. Glass exploded in every direction. The reflection splintered into dozens of shards, each one holding a different version of my face. But behind the mirror, there was a hollow sound. Wood. I peeled it away, blood dripping from a cut on my palm. There was a hidden compartment behind the mirror, and inside it, a journal, tiny, leather-bound, burned at the edges. I opened it. Inside were drawings, crude, childlike. 2 girls, again and again, one smiling, one sad. Sometimes one had her eyes scratched out, sometimes both did. And on the last page, in shaky handwriting, she didn't mean to leave me. She just forgot, but I never forgot her. That night, Ben refused to sleep in his room. He said the mirror in the hallway, the big one we never replaced, had started talking back. Dan thought he was imagining things, maybe sleepwalking, maybe acting out because of the move. But I knew better. I curled up beside Ben in the guest room. I read him a story, hummed an old lullaby I hadn't remembered knowing until the words slipped from my mouth. He was asleep within minutes, and that's when I heard it. A soft tap, 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 like fingernails on glass, coming from the hallway. I crept out and stood in front of the mirror. It was dark. My reflection looked normal, but then she blinked before I did and smiled. "You remembered my name," she whispered, and vanished. "You remembered my name," she whispered, and vanished. I stared at the mirror for a long time after that, waiting, hoping maybe that she'd speak again, but she didn't. The hallway grew quiet, shadows lengthened, and the air felt suddenly too still, as if the house itself had been holding its breath, and now it had exhaled. Some part of me, buried deep beneath fear and reason, believed I had done what Lila wanted. But I was wrong. Remembering her name wasn't the end. It was the beginning. The next morning, Ben had dark circles under his eyes. I asked if he slept okay. He shook his head. "Eli's gone," he said. I blinked. "Gone? He left last night. Said it was time." "Time for what?" Ben shrugged. "He said I wouldn't need him anymore. That she's awake now." A chill ran through me. I pressed him. "Did he say anything else?" Ben hesitated, then pulled something from under his pillow, a folded piece of notebook paper, another drawing. This one was different, less childish, more deliberate, almost careful. It showed a house, our house, windows and chimney and front door, and inside it, through the glass of every window, a different face, all of them identical, all of them Lila. That afternoon, I called my mother again. This time, she answered. Hello? Her voice was hoarse, groggy, like I'd woken her. Mom, it's me. Silence then. I know. I need to ask you something. Long pause. Is it about the girl in the mirror? I froze. You remember? A soft sigh. Of course I do. We all remember. We just don't talk about her. Why not? Because your grandmother made us promise. She said if we pretended hard enough, you'd forget, that it was safer. I could barely breathe. Safer for who? Her voice cracked. For you. She told me everything, or almost everything, that Lila was real, that we were born premature. I was healthy, but Lila was different. Slower to speak, slower to smile, but she loved me, clung to me, copied me, until she started talking to the mirrors, whispering things that didn't make sense, drawing things she'd never seen, and then the accident. A space heater, a short circuit, a power surge. My grandmother claimed it was fate, that the house took care of it, but my mother always suspected otherwise. She used to say the mirrors were a door, she whispered, and that Lila had found a way through. After the call, I sat at the kitchen table in silence for nearly an hour. Ben was napping. Dan was out running errands. The house creaked and settled around me like a living thing. I knew what I had to do. I went upstairs to the hallway mirror, and I waited. It didn't take long. The surface fogged slightly, like breath on glass, and then I saw her, clear as day. Lila, she was older now, still me, but changed, taller, eyes darker, smile wider. You took your time, she said. I didn't know, I replied. She tilted her head. You did. You just didn't want to. I swallowed. Why are you still here? She leaned closer. Because you left me. It wasn't my choice. No, she whispered, but you stayed quiet. You let them erase me. She reached a hand toward the glass. It pressed through, not fully, just fingertips. Like the barrier between us was thinning. You remembered my name, she said again. That was the price. Now I want what I was promised. That night the house changed. The lights flickered, clocks stopped. The mirrors, every single one, began to hum softly, a low, vibrating tone that rattled in your teeth if you stood too close. Dan blamed faulty wiring, said the place was old, that we should bring in an electrician, but I knew better. The next morning, when I opened the fridge, I found something tucked between the milk cartons, a drawing, not Ben's, Lila's. It showed our family at the dinner table, except one seat was empty, and written beneath it in blocky red letters, "Make room." The drawing sat on the table all day. I didn't move it. Dan barely glanced at it, assumed it was Ben's latest weird phase. But I knew. The thick red letters, the empty seat, the steady hum from every mirror in the house. Make room. Lila wasn't just haunting us. She was coming home. That night, I couldn't eat. Dan tried to joke, tried to break the tension, but it was like chewing air. I watched Ben push his peas into shapes on his plate, a circle, then a line, then two figures holding hands. Do you remember her? I asked softly. He didn't look up. She remembers me. After dinner, Dan offered to put Ben to bed. As soon as they were upstairs, I walked to the hallway mirror. I didn't need to call her. She was already there, waiting. Her reflection moved the second I turned the corner. No delay, no lag, just her face where mine should have been. You said you wanted what you were promised, I whispered. Lila's eyes sparkled. You promised never to forget. I was a child. So was I. Her voice echoed strangely, not like it came from the mirror, but from behind me, close, almost at my ear. I swallowed. What do you want? She tilted her head, that same too wide smile curling at the corners of her mouth. A name, a place, a life. The temperature dropped suddenly. My breath came out in puffs. The mirror's surface began to ripple like disturbed water. For a moment, I saw myself again, but younger, 6 or 7, sitting cross-legged in that secret room, whispering, smiling, and Lila beside me, always beside me. We had been inseparable until we weren't. I returned to the hidden room the next morning, not to smash it, not to cleanse it, but to prepare it. I dusted, I cleaned. I opened the small window, letting in real air for the first time in decades. And then I did something I didn't expect. I brought one of Ben's drawings, the one where he'd drawn our family and Lila in the mirror. I taped it to the far wall beside the bed. "Make room," she had written, so I did. That night, I sat Ben down and asked him a question I never thought I'd say. "If Lila came back, do you think she'd hurt us?" He looked at me, really looked, as if he knew something I didn't. "I think she's lonely," he said. "She just wants someone to see her." I nodded. "Okay," he added, "but she's sad. And when people are sad for too long, they get weird." I left the hallway mirror uncovered. I didn't sleep. At 2:14 a.m., I heard it. Tap, tap, tap. I got out of bed, barefoot, heart hammering. She was there, not in the mirror, in the hallway. Standing outside the hidden door. Same dress, same hair, same cracked smile. She didn't move, didn't speak. She just waited, and I opened the door. She stepped inside the hidden room without a word, running one hand along the bedpost, then the wall. Her fingers lingered on the tape drawing. Then she sat. She looked at me and blinked. Slow, careful, and vanished. The hum in the mirrors stopped. The lights flickered back to life. The cold lifted, and I knew she was home. Weeks passed. Nothing strange happened. Ben stopped talking about Eli. His drawings returned to normal. He laughed more, slept through the night. Dan still didn't know the whole story. I didn't tell him. Some things can't be explained, only felt. But I knew what I'd done. I gave her a name. I gave her a room. I gave her what was taken. Sometimes I pass the hallway mirror and swear I see 2 of me, only for a second. Sometimes the reflection lags, just barely. But I don't panic. I just nod and keep walking because I remember her now. And that was the promise.